Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. Our guest today is the President of Yemen, Ali Abdullah Saleh. Mr. President, hello and thank you for being here.
Good day.
The Vice President, Mr. Mansour Hadi, was in charge of negotiating with the opposition. Now, does this mean that this is the first step of your handing over of power?
Yes. He has been given the power to set up a dialogue with the opposition on the formation of a transitional government, on holding a presidential election. He has that power, and he will be able to take over once an agreement has been reached on a procedure under the Gulf Countries Initiative.
So this means that there are not too many points of contention, are there?
From what I've seen, there's no real major divergence. 80% is ready.
Mr. President, a very straightforward question. Do you have the intention of stepping down?
Yes, of course. I already wanted to leave power in 2006, but the tough and exceptional circumstances the country was living through forced me to stand again. But I've been in power for more than 33 years in Yemen. I've overcome a lot of problems. There have been some fascinating moments, but as far as I'm concerned, anybody who hangs on to power is a madman.
Yes, but when are you really going to hand over then?
Once an agreement on the initiative of the Gulf countries has been reached, and once the provisional procedure has been implemented to hold an election, and then I'll hand over.
That means there's no specific date, is there?
The timetable has been decided.
And what's this date?
90 days.
90 days.
Yes, we had agreed on a period ranging from 30 to 60 days. Some people are in favour of 30 days, others wanted a longer period, but I'm perfectly content with 60 or 90 days, no problem.
Mr. President, the 21st of November is the date when the report on Yemen will be submitted to the Security Council at the UN. Does this mean that that date will mean the end of the turmoil in your country?
I certainly hope so. I hope that the report will enable us to reach the end of the crisis, provided that all parties agree.
Mr. President, you cautioned the population against the possibility of a civil war. Do you think this is a more remote possibility now?
Well, if we reach an agreement on the Gulf Countries Initiative, well then, there'll be no civil war. However, if some provisions are excessive, if they do not take into account the specific features of the Yemeni people, its customs, its traditions, and give too much emphasis on having a variety of political parties, that would be wrong. I believe we need to give preference to these traditions and customs more than ensuring that there are many political parties. I hope that this report will include a complete and definitive solution for Yemen's crisis and will start a new era.
Mr. President, now let's talk about international relations. You have special relations with the USA. What was the nature of these relations during the crisis?
We have an excellent relationship with the United States. And we've been working with the United States in fighting terrorism, and we're also coordinating our efforts with other countries in the region, so it's an excellent relationship.
But some say that during the crisis there was some kind of crack in your relations.
That's not true. Not true at all. No cracks have appeared in our relationship, certainly for our part. If there has been a misunderstanding on the American side, well, it's up to them to clarify matters.
On the other hand, the opposition in Yemen allegates that you use Al-Qaeda as an excuse to stay in power. Does this mean that the crisis has weakened your fight against terrorism?
The opposition is seeking to muddle matters. Yemen has been fighting terrorism for a long time, has been fighting Al-Qaeda in coordination with the United States, and the United States acknowledges this. In fact, the opposition is simply seeking to create confusion. Sometimes they actually work in cooperation with Al-Qaeda or other terrorist movements, and we have overwhelming evidence that the opposition is working hand in hand with Al-Qaeda, in particular with respect to what's happened in Yemen.
You're referring to the Islam movement, aren't you?
Yes, I'm referring to that movement, to the army officers who have deserted. Their relationship with Al-Qaeda is long-standing.
But if you do have evidence, why don't you disclose it?
Well, it's up to the United States to do that.
Are there any US troops operating on Yemeni territory today?
No. No American forces are operating in Yemen.
However, Awlaki was killed by a drone, wasn't he?
Yes, but that attack was launched from the air. What can I do about that?
Did you know about it?
No, I was informed after he died.
But you weren't informed beforehand, were you?
No.
Can we say that any assistance granted to Yemen in the fight against terrorism was reduced considerably after these events?
It's not really financial aid, it's technical assistance. In fact, training, some light weapons, but you can't talk about financial aid.
But Yemen still received money in the general framework of fighting terrorism, is that not true?
That's wrong, utterly wrong.
So we're only talking about some kind of logistical aid?
Yes, it was technical support. That's all, no financial aid.
Regarding financial aid, in the London conference, commitments were made to help Yemen and Afghanistan.
These commitments have not been met.
And why?
I don't know. Well, first of all, of course, there was some hesitation because of unrest in the region that may have led the international community not to honour its commitments, and certainly the situation in the region didn't help matters.
In other words, the international community is leaving Yemen in the lurch.
In fact, the international community is using a pretext, i.e. instability. The opposition, with the help of ambassadors in Saleh, are trying to hurt the regime's image, the country's image, and that is certainly not in the country's interest. All these people are spreading misleading information, false reports, with the help of embassies. All these people are meeting in private premises, in the cellars where the opponents to the regime are hiding out. But we haven't monitored this closely.
The relationship of Ali Abdullah Saleh with the USA was not affected despite your criticism of American leaders, was it?
Well, of course. I mean, we have taken over the Western model of democracy, and Western powers must accept the idea that we can criticize them. I mean, they can't expect us to take over their model and not criticize them.
I see, but quite frankly, couldn't one say that you've been submitted to a lot of pressure?
Of course, pressure is exerted on me. But this is not unusual, and we respond positively if this pressure is in line with Yemen's interest. But sometimes some kinds of pressure are not logical.
And, Mr. President, what do you think of the Arab Revolution today?
As far as I'm concerned, they aren't really revolutions. This is chaos, rather, Arab chaos, creative chaos, admittedly. But this has dragged us back to the 60s, when you had the so-called nationalist upsurge headed by President Nasser. And of course, in those days, Arab countries had an excellent relationship with the USSR that was extremely generous with the Arab world. Currently, what's happening is that these protest movements are supported by small states in the region that lack influence. They are trying to assert themselves. And, of course, these countries are sending mercenaries, troublemakers of all kinds. But in reality, these governments are not supporting Arab revolutions. They are, above all, seeking to undermine these Arab regimes, and their interference certainly hurts national unity in all these countries, and that is fueling chaos in the region. Of course, these regimes claim they are in favour of stability, but maybe this protest wave is going to hit these countries too, and maybe we'll see another Gaddafi case.
And regarding Gaddafi, precisely, how do you feel about his death?
Well, as you know, there were many clashes between myself and Gaddafi. And I must say that I was deeply moved by his death. And I didn't like at all the way he died, but it was his fate. Although, of course, Yemen suffered a lot from Gaddafi's interference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Goodbye and see you soon on France 24.